For many years, the story to be told in this video has stirred up Europe. It is full of many mysteries. It seemed that these mysteries would never be revealed, but suddenly something shocking happened to everyone. Something that revealed the mysteries of this story. The story begins with a pair of Angelique and Ed van den Herk. The couple met in 1978. By this time, Ed was married once and had a 2-year-old son. Little is known about Angelica's past. As for Ed, he was a popular singer in the Netherlands. By 1980, the relationship between Ed and Angelica came to the wedding. In the same year, the couple had a girl named Nicole. A year later, Angelica told Ed that he was not the biological father of the girl. However, despite this, Ed adopted Nicole. In 1988, Ed and Angelica's relationship broke down. The woman had mental health problems. Ed, even though he was not the daughter's father, insisted in court that custody of Nicole be given to him after the divorce. As a result, the court took his side, and after the divorce, Nicole lived with her stepfather and half-brother. Of course, she often saw her mother, but unfortunately her mother's mental illness was only progressing. In 1995, Ed married his third wife, Iolanta. His ex-wife and mother Nicole, Angelica, could not accept this fact and eventually committed suicide. Of course, it was a shock to Nicole. During this difficult time, she was particularly supported by her half-brother, Andy. From that moment on, a key part of the story begins. In 1995, Nicole was already 15 years old. She was at school and worked in one of the bakeries of Conmar's store. October 6, 1995 seemed like a normal day. After school, Nicole went to her grandmother's house as usual to prepare for work. She took her keys, her purse, and she rode her bike to the bakery. In the eyes of her employer, she was a responsible girl. She was never late for work, but this day was far from ordinary. It was 15 minutes into her shift, and Nicole was still missing. The owner of the bakery called Nicole's house, but they were sure she was already at work. Of course, it caused a lot of anxiety, and Nicole's stepfather called the police. The police interviewed possible witnesses, but unfortunately, no one saw a girl that looked like Nicole that day. Then, about an hour later, something was found. During the search, the police found Nicole's bike rather quickly. It was abandoned on the bank of the river. Such a finding obviously did not inspire optimism. There were no other traces of the girl anywhere. Near the place where the bike was found, the work of divers was organized. They tried to find it in the dark, cloudy waters of the river, but luckily she wasn't there. The police were at a loss. It was as if there was no trace of this girl, and no one had any idea where to look for her. In the hope of finding any leads, the detectives questioned the missing girl's family and friends, so they were able to find out that Nicole's biological father lives in Germany, and recently the girl's mother died. This information slightly weakened the police's grasp, because it was suggested that Nicole had run away from home to reunite with her biological father. However, the biological father of the girl denied this assumption. Over the next 2 weeks, the search for the girl yielded no results. Nicole's stepfather criticized the police for not doing enough to find the missing girl. In desperation, he even turned to a psychic. He said that the search should be carried out along the coast of the river where the girl's bike was found. Then, on October 13, 13 days after Nicole's disappearance, the police received another solid piece of evidence. Nicole's bag was found on the riverbank that day. This was a new lead. Nothing was missing from the bag, which made the situation even stranger. After searching the bottom of the river again, the police finally ruled out the possibility that Nicole had drowned. Over the next 5 weeks, the story of Nicole's disappearance is broadcast on several major channels. The leading newspaper, Eindhoven's Dagblad, appears on the front page several times. But all this does not bring results. Then, on 22 November, on the 47th day of the search for the girl, the main question in the case was answered. On November 22, 1995, 10 kilometers from Nicole's house, a tourist discovered human remains in the woods. Forensics confirmed they belonged to Nicole van den Herk. There were several serious wounds to her head. Her lower jaw was broken, and she was stabbed in the chest. Experts considered that the cause of death was internal bleeding. Now, one important question, where Nicole disappeared, replaced another, no less important: who was responsible for her death? But even here, the police had little to go on. It was not until 8 February 1996, 10 weeks after the girl's body was found, that the police had a trace. On that day, a woman arrested in the United States for drug trafficking reported knowing who was responsible for Nicole's death. She said a name that was familiar to the victim's stepfather. The woman said that Nicole, like herself, was involved in drug trafficking, which allegedly caused her death, but the police couldn't confirm it. And it was believed that the woman came up with this story in order to be extradited from the United States to the Netherlands. Eventually, the police came to the conclusion that Nicole's stepfather and brother had been arrested. But after 4 days in custody, they were released because the police had no specific evidence against them. Week after week, month after month, the case does not move from deadlock, and soon it falls on the archives of the police. It remained there for 9 years and was reopened in 2005, but briefly, as no new evidence was found again. So, Nicole's case was archived a second time until something shocking happened. On March 8, 2011, long after the girl's death, her brother Andy posted on Facebook, "Today, I will be arrested for the murder of Nicole. I confessed I'll be in touch soon." The crowd was overwhelmed by the message. For 16 long years, the perp has been under the nose of the police, but in all this time, no one has been able to tie a seemingly close man to the death of a girl. By the time Andy revealed his secret to the world, he was living in England. The same day he was arrested, he spent another 3 weeks in England and was transferred to the Netherlands. The local police were already there, and they reopened an investigation into a case that seemed never to be solved. Andy, the brother of the murdered Nicole, was taken to the Netherlands on 30 March 2011. But despite his confession online, the man, for some reason, stopped contacting the police on the case. He was unable to describe the circumstances in which the crime was committed or explain the motive clearly. In many parts of the world, voluntary recognition is not a reason to condemn a person. If there is no evidence other than a confession against the defendant, such a person cannot be convicted. This legislation is also in force in the Netherlands. Finally, on April 5, despite his confession, Andy was released, but he still wouldn't stop, as if he had some stone on his soul he needed to get rid of. Perhaps his next confession was an attempt to drop this very stone. Right on the day of his release, Andy revealed who Nicole's real killer was. It was their father, Ed. The guy admitted that his dad did it to cover up one big secret. According to Andy, after Nicole's mother died, the girl's stepfather raped her. Somehow, Ed managed to convince Nicole not to tell anyone about it, but the problem was that as a result of the rape, the girl became pregnant. The man feared that if a 15-year-old girl had a child, it would reveal the truth about his crime, so he killed the girl. Of course, the victim's stepfather himself denied that this was the case. However, it was obvious that it would be strange to hear such accusations from the son against the father. If they had no foundation, in an attempt to establish the truth, the police decided to dig up the body of the buried Nicolas in order to send it to an in-depth medical examination. No one at the time could have guessed how this case would end. Examination showed that Nicole's body had the DNA of 2 people's semen. One of the 2 men was her boyfriend, which is basically not strange, while the other person was unknown. What was clear was that neither her brother Andy nor her stepfather was that person. This unsub was probably Nicole's killer. However, this begs the question, what was the meaning of the confessions of the murdered brother? Why did he first confess to the murder of Nicolas himself and then accuse his father of it? By giving an interview, the guy himself answered this question. Andy thought his sister's case needed to be reviewed because in the 16 years since her death, technology has moved forward, and what seemed useless in 1995 now, by looking at the body again, could help establish the truth. Through his confessions, he tried to get the police to reopen the case, examine Nicole's body, or try to find new leads. For this, he even had to perjure his father. The guy knew that his father was innocent, so he understood that it did not threaten him with anything serious. However, This left the police no choice, and authorities had to send Nicole's body back for further examination, and his victims were not in vain. After all, in 2012, the police were able to identify the man whose semen was found in Nicole's body. This man was a man named Jos de Guy. At the time of Nicole's death, he was 28 years old. By 2012, he had already been tried several times. Once for beating up his girlfriend. The second time was for raping a single girl riding a bike, which was a lot like Nicole. In addition, he spent 5 years in a mental health clinic. Now he became the main suspect in the rape and murder of Nicole van den Hurk. The trial of the then 48-year-old man began in 2015. His lawyer insisted that the semen evidence only proved that the defendant had sex with Nicole. That doesn't prove rape, let alone murder. A more detailed examination revealed that, in addition to the semen, other traces of the defendant's DNA were found on the victim's body and clothing. The prosecutor asked for 16 years in prison, followed by treatment in a mental health clinic, but the court found Jos de Guy not guilty of Nicole's death and sentenced him to only 5 years for rape, which caused outrage in the room.
Alles overwegend legt de rechtbank aan verdachte een gevangenisstraf op voor de duur van 5 jaar. Met aftrek van de tijd die verdachte... Goed gedaan, jongens. Goed gedaan. Echt waar. Ik ben trots op mij. Kijk vanavond naar wij kinderen. Kijk, applaus, nog een keer. Super.
The family of the murdered Nicole was crushed by the sentence. Many considered it too lenient, but in 2018, the prosecutor managed to have the case reviewed. This time, the accused was found guilty not only of rape, but also of the death of Nicolaas, and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. All this was possible because Nicole's brother did not accept her death. It would seem that 16 years had passed, but he still remembered and had the courage to do a truly amazing thing.